welcome to the MacIver Report. It is January 17th, 2025. In case you missed last week's podcast, ordinarily we would be talking about items that we didn't necessarily write about on our website, MacIverInstitute.com, but starting this year, we're doing a new format where we review all of our news stories and reports from the week. Just so you don't miss anything, because most of what you find on MacIver, you aren't going to find anywhere else. And we're producing a ton of content these days, so it's easy to miss stuff, and we want to make sure that you don't miss anything important. It's all important. I'm joined today by
Michael Lucas, right here, policy analyst.
Michael Lucas, policy analyst, economist, Hillsdale graduate. Very proud to have him on staff. So, Mike, why don't we jump right into it? I've got the right date this week, so that's already off to a better start.
Sweet.
So, first story. Governor Evers proposes new Office of Violent Prevention. He wants millions in new state budgets. So this Governor Evers is going to be giving his budget address about a month from now. And he's already kind of laying the groundwork for what's going to be in there, giving lots of previews, trying to get public support for some of his initiatives. This is one, the Office of Violence Prevention. I mean, it's not unheard of for governors to create new offices. Governor Walker created the Office of School Safety. That's still around. Usually these are just vehicles to provide grant funding for various things. This one's going to be, grants for like police departments and things like that. Obviously, in the back of Evers' mind, I mean, he's a big fan of red flag laws. I mean, ultimately, he wants to take your guns away. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. So when he presents something like the Office of Violent Prevention, we know that he's not talking about criminal violence. He's talking about guns specifically. Violence is just an easy cover for that. But is this how he's going to be able? Is he going to be able to do anything to advance his agenda? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it sounds good, and when it comes to politics, that's really all that matters. If it's an office about preventing violence, then it must prevent violence. But yeah, in this article that Ben wrote, Evers said these investments will support efforts like supporting multi-agency law enforcement investigations and using crime gun intelligence tools. He may have meant to say gun crime intelligence tools, but this sounds like a first step towards red flag laws and preventing, anyone who has any sort of history of mental illness or whatever it is from owning guns, or also taking at face value, reports from neighbors or other people that so-and-so is unhinged, mentally unstable, and then basically,
that would be
going in and taking their firearms.
Yeah, that would be a red flag law. But I think that's a good point. I mean, there's no red flag law right now. But were there to be red flag laws, this would probably be the office that would help administer them.
Yeah.
I mentioned, this reminds me of the Office of School Safety. After a number of shootings throughout the 2010s, Governor Walker established the Office of School Safety, and they've issued out, millions and millions of dollars of grants. I forget the exact figure, but I mean, it was any school in the state could apply for these grants starting in 2018 to improve their infrastructure, to improve school safety. And, it's been really, there's something to this, because during the referendums, we pointed out, during the fall, how there are so many schools. Like every school that goes to referendum, they say, we need this to improve safety. And then if they go on to detail, they say, well, we need secure entrances and we need to fix our locks. And it's like, no, I can look this up. I've got the spreadsheet. It's like, some of these schools, it's like you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in these grants. How do you still not have a secure entrance at your middle school? How do you still not have, locks on the doorknobs? So, I mean, it's, I don't know what the money went for. Clearly, it didn't go for what it was supposed to go for. This is one of those things where open records requests can only get you so far, because they aren't going to, that you don't want out in the public, all of your security plans for, for any installation, much less a school. So, I mean, I can't really go and, open records request, hey, let me see, where all this, let me see the plan that they sent you that you gave them grant money for.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen. It might be a little bit easier. You might get more transparency on this program, but, in general, a lot of these grant programs are just, kind of scams. And I feel like, somebody needs to investigate that Office of School Safety.
Well, really, all you need to do is just drive by your school and see, is it surrounded by a barbed wire fence or, a fence with, the spikes and stuff. Most of them aren't, None of the school I taught at, part of it was. But the schools I went to, they weren't secure. There were no gates. There were no fences.
Well, they don't need it. All these school shootings is somebody just walks in the front door and starts shooting up the place.
Yeah. The issue with a lot of schools is, even if they are enclosed by fences and gates, they leave the main gate open during the day. And so some schools started saying, oh, well, we have to close the gate to the parking lot so people can't just drive in here. And then you get a bunch of pushback because people are like, well, we got delivery guys come in and whatever, sports vans and things like that. So they end up not doing it. You could, do what Vanguard or Vanguard? How does he say that?
Van Vanguard.
Van Vanguard says, and just, get more cops on the street. Lots of schools are doing this where you have a school safety officer.
Well, that's
right?
really controversial, though, because it makes a lot of students, like in Milwaukee, really scared to see cops in school. They're very uncomfortable about that. So, it doesn't make for a good learning environment. And, you can get arrested when you start beating people up in the halls. So.
If that's the case, do what Florida does. Florida has what's called a school guardian program, which is for minimum wage. Any teacher can sign up with their local police department, and over the course of a summer, become licensed to carry a firearm in school.
We're talking about kids that don't even want, police officers, uniformed police officers.
If you're a teacher and you're concealed carrying, which you have to do if you're part of this, they don't know, and you just certainly don't tell kids that you have it. But we had teachers who did that.
Yeah, it works in Florida. Here, people lose their minds when you talk about arming teachers, But
well, what do you prefer, guys? Guns on your teachers or dead kids?
And this, it felt like a little bit of a tangent talking about the Office of School Safety, but the two issues are actually directly connected. We've provided all this money to the Office of School Safety, and all these schools still can't even, get locks for their front doors.
Yeah.
So, is the Office of Violence Prevention going to do anything? Absolutely not. Is it going to spend a lot of money? Absolutely. Are you going to be able to figure out where that money went? Yeah, no way.
And the governor says he is directing $10 million to begin work right away. That's not going to do anything. $10 million is nothing.
Yeah.
That's literally nothing. So you're saying that, violence in schools is only a $10 million cost or a $10 million problem?
Well, it's not just
Obviously,
schools. It's all of society.
And all of sorry. The entire state will solve our crime problem with $10 million.
All right, let's see. We also have another story. Milwaukee rep open to debating school standards, but doesn't want, quote unquote, reshuffling. This was an opinion piece written by State Representative Lakeisha Myers. Not for MacIver. This is for I think the Journal Sentinel.
Yeah.
But the background of this story is last year, Department of Public Instruction created new academic standards for the state, and what this did was, for years we had one system of measuring, proficiency across core subject areas, and a lot of students, the state wasn't looking all that great. Public schools really suck, so. Yep. You change the standards and you move everything around, so you can't really draw straight comparisons. And so she unveiled these new standards. You can't compare anything, it's pretty much starting all over because you can't compare anything to what happened before. And, it's also a huge curve. Schools that were, 40% proficiency, which is like at top of the heap when it comes to public schools in Wisconsin. If you've got 40% proficiency in your school, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
for public schools.
For context, schools in the Miami-Dade Public School District where I taught, their math proficiency was like 25%.
Yeah, public schools suck. I mean, you just can't get around it.
We, by the way, were 99% because we were a charter school.
But, anyway, so obviously, they don't want people to think that public schools suck as bad as they do. So they've changed the standard. So now you have, schools that last year were 40% are now 50% proficiency, which is still absolutely awful. But you shuffled the decks, you shuffled all the chairs on the deck. So now you can't really tell, okay, you can't draw apples to apples comparisons now. And then you got this representative saying, well, you can't, the legislature is a little upset about this. And you have this, former Democrat legislator who's saying, well, you can't just reshuffle it unless you give a ton more money to schools.
Which makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense.
You don't get to change the measurements, the standards for assessing literacy unless we get more money. It makes no sense.
Any excuse to give schools more money. She throws in a line there about how, DPI, needs more money because they need to be responsible for ensuring that these schools are meeting their standards. She doesn't mean that. No Democrat means that.
This is what she wrote. This is just astounding. We need policymakers to understand that money does answer all things. Oh my gosh.
Great.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the things that she says that she wants money for are okay, I guess. We need full funding that matches the rhetoric about blah, blah, blah. We need smaller class sizes. Yes, you do. Investment in teacher recruitment. No. Wraparound services, whatever the heck that means, and resources that create ideal situations for success. So you can increase, the pool of potential teachers very easily and decrease, the size of classes at the same time. If you start firing your administrators, you do not need these people.
Well, all right.
And you don't have to spend any additional money, and you get two of the things that you want. You get more teachers coming in because no one wants to work under the thumb of an administrator who hasn't been in the classroom for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And you have more teachers at your school, so you can, have smaller class sizes. Great. So you put 30 kids in a room, and it's a zoo. It's crazy.
Yeah. And
15 is probably like sweet spot.
So, those are some good points. I mean, you get rid of the administrators, add more, you're not only adding more teachers, but you're also giving them more of a free hand to actually teach the kids.
Yeah.
Looking into this, around the state, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but this is just kind of something I picked up on is you do have some schools in the state that have a really high teacher to student ratio. You do have small classroom sizes. And you start to see really good results when you get to, one adult for every 10 kids. You start to see an improvement, I guess, at that point. That's an insane cost. Mm-hmm. It gets really expensive. We're going to be highlighting some of these schools, during our budget coverage where, you got decent achievement rates and all that, but you're spending like $30,000, $40,000 a kid. Mm-hmm. And even then you don't, and if at that you should have 100% and you still don't.
Yeah.
So, it just, the model of public education just doesn't work. And we're never going to get, I love saying, whoa, this school has 95% high school graduation rate and a 30% achievement rate. So, you're just waving kids through to get their diploma.
When's the last time you met someone who didn't graduate high school? Obviously, they're just passing these kids.
Yeah.
If someone says, oh, I didn't graduate high school, it's like, oh, wow, you're living on the street? Like, what happened? You're not going to encounter a person without a high school, education who's, working a white collar job,
no, and they just
or even a blue collar job. These people are unemployed.
Car salesman. That's the best you're gonna do.
Anyone can graduate.
Yeah. But exactly. Anyone can graduate. All you gotta do is stick it out.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna wave you through. 70% of the kids that are graduating can't read, but they're still getting their diplomas. Can't read at an 8th grade level. I should be.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's public education. We'll talk about that all day. All right, next story. Moving on to the current legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate are controlled by Republicans, but they don't agree on everything. So we got Wisconsin Republicans not entirely on the same page heading into the 2025 session. Some of the things that the Senate and the Assembly agree on is we need a tax cut. We want to have more control over how Evers spends money. That's really big. That's been a big discussion point since the COVID relief funds that went directly to governors, and the legislatures had zero oversight over that, which just turned into a huge pig fest. Return the state's $4 billion surplus back to taxpayers. So,
which, by the way, Evers takes credit for.
Yeah, I mean Evers,
even though all of it came from the feds.
Yeah, I mean Evers is going to fight that tooth and nail. That giving the surplus back, doing a big tax cut, he's going to have all the rhetoric of why we shouldn't do it, and then at the end of the day, he's going to sign that tax cut into law, and he's going to run for re-election on it.
Yeah.
Then we got some of the things that the Assembly and Senate disagree on: abortion and early counting of absentee ballots. There was.
What is the disagreement about abortion? Are some Republicans in the legislature just like leave it alone?
That's exactly
it. Leave it where it is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because they know that if you start, introducing abortion bills, they aren't going to get passed.
Yeah.
So the only reason why you're going to introduce an abortion bill is for publicity.
Yes.
And these days, it's only going to be bad publicity. Mm-hmm. And we're going into a Supreme Court race. We're in a Supreme Court race right now. And the liberals would love nothing more than for abortion to be back in the spotlight. Mm-hmm. Because that is their winning issue. As soon as they mention abortion, their polling numbers go up. As soon as they say Republicans are talking about abortion, oh my gosh, does that pump up their numbers?
Yeah.
So, it's, and this is another thing where it's disingenuous in the first place. If Republicans were serious about some of these issues when it comes to abortion, they would have taken care of it when they had the trifecta. When they had the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's office, they should have been pushing all these things through.
Yeah.
So, after Walker left, there was a in 2018 or 2019 there was a time period there. Apparently it was closing fast. Nobody realized it, but abortion used to be like just a slam dunk issue for conservatives. You bring up an abortion bill, either it would pass with huge public support, or the public it would fail because of Evers vetoing it, and the public would be, hey, that why did he do that? You'd have the public on your side. Look, something happened. I don't know what it is, but when Marquette Law School takes these polls now, 95% of Wisconsin residents are pro-abortion to some degree.
Yeah.
This is a losing issue. So if you aren't actually going to be able to accomplish anything, tangible, like getting a law passed, just bringing this up just to bring it up, I mean, it's not only pointless, but it's also very damaging. Mm-hmm. I'm pro-life. I'm in that 5%. There's no political solution to this at this point. I mean, if you're part of that 5%, I know there's a lot of people in that 5% that think we need laws to make abortion illegal. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You're back in the culture war now. You've been kicked out of the political arena. You aren't going to get anything accomplished there until you've gotten the public back on your side. So you're back in the culture war era. So I mean, so in my opinion, this is really not a political issue at this point. It's a cultural issue. And for the Senate to even be bringing it up is just a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, in my own experience, conservatives that I know, I mean, most of them aren't diehard, no abortion whatsoever. They think that, 4, 6, 8 weeks is a reasonable cutoff. And pretty much all of them are okay with something like Plan B. That's termination of a pregnancy over the counter.
Yeah.
But I just think that's the way things are moving now. I think people looking at the issue of abortion say, people make mistakes and, accidents happen sort of thing. Take care of it before it is a really costly thing. So.
Yeah. It's a shame that this is, I mean, I think the
I do also think, though, that those same people will say, one time okay, two times you need
Yeah.
you need to lock it up.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's. I'm sorry to say that this issue has become a rout for the pro-life community. I mean, just we have decisively lost in the political arena, and it's, it's like I said, this is more of a cultural issue at this point. But the longer that pro-lifers try to make this a political issue, the worse things are going to get. Because when you're picking candidates, on the basis of, is this person 100% on board with my beliefs as part of 5% of the voters?
Yeah.
Every candidate, there's enough people, that 5% is enough to spoil elections because, elections are decided by 1%.
Yep.
So, you're not just going to lose on the abortion front. You're going to lose on every culture of life issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
you're gonna have to compromise, or you're gonna lose it all.
And I'm not even saying compromise on your beliefs. I'm saying pick your political fights.
Well, yeah, but if you're picking your fight, then you're gonna have to compromise on something.
Yeah. So, all right. Next. So then, early counting of absentee ballots. This is another one that's kind of two different schools of thought on this.
This is about the Madison ballots.
This is about all ballots.
All of them. Okay.
So, right now you vote absentee. They you vote early. You whether it's in person or through the mail, you put it in an envelope and they lock that up in a box. And on election day, they open up that box and start tearing open the envelopes and feeding your ballots through the ballot reader, ballot scanner. Now, this is part of the reason why it takes large municipalities like Milwaukee all day and all night to count their ballots. So they say.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's people that say, well, they should be allowed to open up the ballots the day before the election and start feeding them through the machine then. There are some Republicans in the Assembly that think this is a great idea. There are a lot of Republicans in the Senate who think this is a terrible idea. And there's it's not divided that evenly. There's probably a lot of Assemblymen who think it's a terrible idea too.
Sure.
If and the fear is, well, if you start counting the ballots a day early, the Democrats in Milwaukee are going to know how many ballots they need to make up.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something to that, maybe not. But all you need to know is that Governor Evers is all for early counting. So
you should be against it now.
Yeah, you know that Governor Evers isn't about anything that increases election integrity or security. So if he is saying that he would gladly sign that law, you should probably sit down at your in your work group and have a really good discussion on why would Governor Evers want this passed into law.
Yeah.
So.
All right, what's
next? We've got, back on the abortion issue, Senator Lemahue says, that they would be open to passing a law or passing a bill in the Senate. They wouldn't pass the Assembly or get signed by the governor. But, again, talking about like 14-week abortion ban. I mean, look, Evers isn't going to sign it. He's told you he's not going to sign it. He said he's not going to sign anything that restricts, abortion in Wisconsin. So.
And if he did, what do you think the courts would do?
Yeah.
Great.
So, I mean,
you're just something to consider, too,
I mean, it's just Republicans throwing rocks at a hornet's nest. I mean, I don't know what the strategy is here.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, are some of these people... Well, never mind.
Yeah. All right, so the other, on the April 1st ballot, there is going to be an amendment for voter ID. This is something that, speaking of Democrats, being opposed to anything that increases election integrity or security, they hate voter ID. Dan O'Donnell, and if the constitutional amendment, it's going to, we've got a voter ID law in Wisconsin. You want to vote, you got to show your photo ID. Really simple. That's a law. We're going to make we want to make it part of the Constitution. So there's going to be a resolution on the ballots on April 1st to make that law actually a constitutional amendment.
Bill, this gets to the heart of why there's a lot of confusion regarding these constitutional amendments that are recently added. For example, only citizens vote, which passed. If this is already a law in the books, Bill, then why do we need a constitutional amendment?
Because the Supreme Court is run by liberals who really don't care what the law says or what the Constitution says. They kind of make it up as they go along. Whatever is the liberal flavor of the day, they go along with. And so with voter ID, it's a law. They can easily interpret. The first thing they're going to do is try to say that it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
If it's part of the Constitution, they can't really say it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And this is one where they might be able to, if they work at it long enough, they might figure out some way to reinterpret it. But it's going to be once it's in the Constitution, it gets to be a bit of a stretch, especially when it's a very specific issue like this. If it's something like process or procedural that's in the Constitution, they have ways of making that say what they want it to.
Yeah. So the whole point of these amendments for people listening, right, that are redundant because we already have laws that say the exact same thing, is to make it absolutely abundantly clear to the courts that they shall not pass, that they shall not, ignore statutes that are lawfully passed and signed into law by the legislature and the governor.
And
because they do ignore it and they do interpret it however they want. That's the whole point of these amendments.
And any law that they don't like, they're going to find a way of claiming it's unconstitutional. If it's in the Constitution, they can't say it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So Dan O'Donnell wrote a piece about why Democrats and liberals are so opposed to this, and he points out things like their own events, they require photo ID. You need a photo ID for everything in society. To say that it's to claim that minorities can't get photo IDs to vote is really demeaning, and how you can't participate in society without a photo ID. So it's a really poor argument, and Dan says it's kind of a racist argument too.
Yeah. There's a great video that people should look up on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about the bigotry of low expectations. A guy goes around and he interviews a bunch of students at UC Berkeley, and he asks, hey, should African Americans, be required to, have ID or things like this? And they say, no, just, and it's like, why don't you think they should be required to have ID? And universally, all these kids say, well, I just don't think that they know how to get an ID. Like, I don't think a lot of them know, like, how to navigate the internet and, book an appointment with the DMV or whatever. And then the guy goes to, like, Brooklyn, New York, and he starts interviewing black folks on the streets, and he's like, do you have an ID? And everyone's like, yes, I have an ID. He's like, do you know where to get an ID? And there's this one guy, it's great. He's like, yeah, you go to DMV. It's down on, 13th and Miller or whatever the street is, right? So it really is, it is racist.
Well, if we find
actually,
that, we'll have to retweet
to
it.
Oppose voter ID if your argument is that, minorities don't know how to get ID or they don't have access. It's really, you're assuming that an entire group of people is stupid.
Well, if we find that video, we'll have to retweet that or share that somehow. All right, we're going to get into your favorite topic here, Mike.
Yes.
Home prices and zoning. If you follow MacIver Whisk and News MacIver on X, Twitter, you will see we actually grabbed some clips from a CNBC story. I got a bit of a confession. I do watch CNBC video reports on YouTube, and this one just dropped this week about, why can't people afford starter homes?
Yeah.
And, CNBC is pretty much saying the exact same thing that MacIver is saying. Real quick, this graph right here, this shows the number of starter homes built by year. And you can see that we dropped out. I think we bottomed out there at, 2018 or 2019. And CNBC says the number one reason is zoning laws.
Oh, yes.
So, Mike, here's your soapbox.
All right. Yeah, this is, okay. This is a pretty bipartisan issue. And doesn't matter who you ask, left or right, pretty much everyone identifies zoning and lot regulations as the reason for, scarcity of houses and high home prices. A few decades ago, zoning laws were not as important because you still had a lot of land that had not yet been developed. So you could build houses and fill in these planned areas within cities and counties without really affecting the price of anything. There was available space. There was, opportunity to build. But now every piece of land is filled. Every piece of land has a house on it or has a building on it. Zoning laws, what they do, they segregate, into use types. So you got residential, commercial, industrial generally, okay? If you're in a residential zone, only residential buildings can be constructed in that zone. Once you get down to an individual piece of land, then you have lot regulations. Minimum lot sizes, you have maximum building heights, you have minimum setbacks, you've got maximum building coverage, and all these things, what they do is they limit how much development can occur on a piece of land. So for example, a pretty common number is that if you have a parcel of land, you can't cover more than 40% of it with any sort of development. That includes the house and the garage and the shed and the driveway, which really leaves, 25% of a lot available to build a house. So the situation that you have now, mainly due to minimum lot sizes, is zoning boards are coming along saying that, everyone needs to live in a white picket fence with a front yard and a backyard and, a dog and, 2.1 kids running around because they have this idea of, 1950s America where everyone's living in these beautiful suburbs.
Well, not that. They want an updated version. Because the 1950s houses would have been perfect. Those are 800 square foot houses,
yes.
like 20 on a block.
Yes.
Now they want,
Now they want mansionettes.
1,500 square foot houses, is standard starter home now.
Yeah.
And you need a quarter acre of a lot, or or approaching a quarter acre.
Yes. And because of all of that, you do not have smaller lots with smaller houses, and you're forcing people who are middle income, middle class and lower middle class, and especially lower class, you're preventing them from being able to afford houses like this, where you have to buy a quarter acre lot and a 1,900 square foot home. 1,000 square foot home isn't possible. It's not allowed. Okay. Even if you have a developer and he has a quarter acre lot, what's his incentive to build an 800 square foot house? There is no incentive. If he wants to maximize his return on that piece of property, he wants to build as big a house as possible, which immediately disbars the middle class and the lower class from owning homes. And there's a whole bunch of social consequences from that as well.
But so I mean, the first step is to make it so it's legal for home builders to build smaller homes.
Yes, it's not legal at the moment.
So, the first step is making it legal, and then we can start talking about some of the other things that government does that disincentivizes, land developers or, home builders from building smaller homes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. So then we got, and this was a chart.
This just shows the scarcity of homes. So this graph shows the number of new houses started and completed divided by the total number of households in the U.S. at any given time. So all the way on the left in the 1970s, you had, 0.03, blah, 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 per household. Okay. Today, in 2023, I think is what this goes up to, you've got 0.01 and some change. So we're looking at more than 50 years of data, probably about 60 years of data here. We're near the all-time low. The all-time low, of course, is after the subprime, mortgage crisis, where the government incentivized people to build a whole bunch of houses, and everybody thought that, real estate always goes up and home prices always rise, and that by building all these houses will be bought and lived in, and it's a sustainable venture. But of course, people were building houses in places where there wasn't demand for houses, and you end up getting the crash, and you have a bunch of vacant houses, and some 25-year-olds who own 3 houses and are renting them out. They're all rental properties, and whatever. It all comes to crash because interest rates rise, and everyone who took out a mortgage on these new homes took it out on an adjustable rate mortgage. So for the first year, they didn't have to pay any interest on the mortgage that they took out. And then since it was an adjustable rate mortgage, when interest rates rise, they got hammered with 10, 12, 15% interest rates on these mortgages, and they all went bust.
Yeah. So, there are so many factors with this. I mean, that was actually a longer news story. That just happened to be the first thing that they talked about.
Yeah.
At some point, I feel like, probably at MacIver, we need to start, cataloging a lot of these impacts, because we've covered a lot of different reasons over the years that are affecting home prices. Zoning is a big one that we've really focused on a lot, especially recently.
Yeah, but
in the past, I was hammering building codes.
Yep, building codes are huge
because it's and I've seen the stat before. I mean, we could find it again pretty easily, but it's something like, building codes. Those are, first of all, those aren't, lawmakers sitting around saying, oh my gosh, we've had a ton of fires, we need to change the fire codes. It's a bunch of people in private industry have invented new fire safety products that cost a lot of money that they need to require home builders to put in their homes.
Yes.
So they lobby the nonprofit organization that writes building codes to put this in their building codes. And then that nonprofit corporation goes to governments and say, hey, here are the new building codes. You guys need to turn these into a law.
Yeah.
And every $1,000 that you increase the cost of building a home, you price out, so many, hundreds of thousands of people that want to buy homes.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
so building codes, these zoning ordinances that we've already talked about, why are so few homes being built right now? It's, we still have this, it's the building capacity is a, that doesn't, the more money that government pumps into building homes, that doesn't suddenly increase the number of carpenters you have. You've got a set capacity.
Yeah.
And you could implement policies, education programs, incentives, and slowly you'll build that capacity, but it's not something that turns on a dime. So when government starts pumping in all this money into government building projects, public works projects, you are taking away from the supply of carpenters and electricians and plumbers that could be out there working on home projects. So, your $100 million engineering building at UW-Madison, you're going to be taking away tradesmen that might otherwise be working on homes, and instead they're going to be building something for the government.
Yep.
And
this is crowding out.
Yeah. So this is something that we have been investigating this for a few months now. We're continuing looking for ways to really illustrate this point of capacity and production. And it's not just government projects. In Janesville, the metro area that I live in, we've got this enormous ice arena going in, almost completely funded by the government, but it's a private venture.
Yeah.
They've been building it for 8 months now. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of concrete. That's a lot of carpenters and electricians and plumbers that might otherwise be building in the suburbs, building more houses. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, building codes, absolutely huge.
And a lot of this we've covered before in one way or another, and we could, it'd be great for us to maybe catalog it or list it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of going to be my segue into our next item, which is a preview. The Wisconsin State Budget 2025 to 2027, our ongoing coverage. We're going to be launching this early next week, Monday or Tuesday. And the idea this year is we are going to have an overview piece that tells you pretty much everything you need to know to make sense of the budget debate. And going along with this, that story is always going to be at the top of our budget web page, and we're going to be updating it. So we're going to be filling in, we're going to be linking to our newest articles there. We're going to be telling you what stage we are in the budget debate at any given time. what comes next, what just happened. So it's going to kind of be like a live blog, but not really, because with a lot of those live blogs out there, everything gets pushed down. So, you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom to get the basic information. This is going to be a piece that has all the basic information, but we're going to be continually adding more hyperlinks within it. And so you can always find the most up-to-date information as you're going through the piece. And we'll also be tweeting and giving other updates on to what we're updating on the piece. So. So that'll be a big, that'll be in the week ahead. And then also in the week ahead as well is, so first of all, Governor Evers, he's going to be giving his he's going to be giving his budget address on February 18th. We'll be covering that. That's going to be the next big milestone in this process. But next week, he's going to be giving another speech too. It's his State of the State address. That'll be on Wednesday. And we'll be following that too and providing some coverage of that. So those are both really big speeches. Those are the biggest. The State of the States is ordinarily the biggest speech of the year for the governor. Every other year, he also gives the budget address. These are both two like full joint sessions. You'll have all the Supreme Court there. You'll have all the legislature there. So these are big deals, and he's going to lay out his So next week he's going to tell you exactly how awesome he thinks Wisconsin is, and every governor, no matter how bad things are, it's the state of our state is strong. That's how you always end it. And then you bring in the UW marching band to, drown out anybody that might think otherwise. So that's laying out the present, and then the future will be his budget address. These days the budget address just tells you about what are the current liberal narratives? What does Governor Evers want to happen? Because very little of that is going to make the actual budget.
Yeah.
All right. Mike, do you have anything, any alibis, any last words?
That's it.
Okay, well, cruise through this one. We're at 42 minutes, so that's good. Hey, thank you everyone for joining us for the MacIver Report and for going through these stories with us. We're always looking for ways to just bring you the news and the analysis that you aren't going to get anywhere else. And we're really pumping out the content these days. And as this budget debate really gets going, there's going to be a lot coming at you. And MacIver, we've been doing this coverage for well over 15 years now. So, you can expect, in-depth coverage from us, and we won't let you down this year either. So anyway, be sure to join us next week for the next MacIver Report when we talk about all the news stories we do next week. So until then, take care. Have a great weekend.